What's going on, everybody? My name is Mike, bringing you a little bit of Kerbal Space Program. This is a game I picked up in mid-July during the Steam Summer Sale, and I immediately fell in love with it. This game is basically the Minecraft of spaceflight. If you've never seen Kerbal Space Program before, stop watching this video. Go to kerbalspaceprogram.com. Check it out on Reddit. It's an amazing. It's a simulator is what it is, and I think it's just a blast to play because there's endless possibilities of what you can do. And I'm here today to actually give a brief tutorial on building your first rocket and getting it into the air and hopefully getting it into orbit. A lot of new players actually struggle with that. There's some guides out there, and I figured I'd take a stab at making one of my own. So let's jump right into it, shall we? So we'll go start game here. I would resume saved, but I don't necessarily want to have the sky cluttered up with all of the flights that I have in progress. As you can see, I've got about 11 flights in progress, including a fully functional space station, and maybe I'll get to doing a video on that at some point. But for now, we're going to start new. We'll just call it, tutorial. Something like that, and currently only sandbox mode is available, which is what we want, so hit next. And as we wait for this to load, there we go. So here's our Space Center. This is the Kerbal Space Center, or KSC, similar to the real-world Kennedy Space Center. We've got our launch pad here. Basically, this is mission control, spaceplane hangar, astronaut core, etc. I don't know what this building is, but we're not concerned with that yet. Right here is where our magic is going to happen first. This is the vehicle assembly building. So we're going to jump into this. So here we are. This is the vehicle assembly building. This is where we build our rockets. And you can build all manner of designs, anything you can really think of. But, you know, real physics are going to actually take effect on whatever you build, so you kind of have to keep some certain things in mind. So to start off, we're going to do something very simple. I'm going to start with a Command Pod Mark 1. So here it is, right? And we can kind of rotate around it, zoom in a little bit on that rocket. There it is. It's a single-seater command pod, keeping things real simple for our first rocket. One of the first things I like to do when I'm building a new rocket from the top down, and I always recommend you go from the top down, so start with your command pod and then do everything else underneath it, is I like to go into the utility menu. As you see up here, you start on the pod menu, and there's your propulsion control, structural, a whole bunch of different parts that you can use to add to your rocket to give it more functionality, more rockets. Everybody loves more rockets. And things of that nature. But like I said, I'm going to go over to the utility tab first, and I'm going to go down here to the Mark 16 parachute. I think this is the right one, yes. And I'm going to stick that on top of there. Why do I want that on top of there like that? Well, what goes up must come down, right? Basic rules of physics. If it goes up, it's going to come down. So we want this command pod to come down and hit the ground, but not very fast, because I want to keep the Kerbal inside alive. So that's what this parachute is going to allow us to do. So now that we have that, I'm just going to move that up there a little bit. I'm going to go over to my propulsion tab, which contains most importantly our engines, but also somewhat more importantly our fuel tanks. And keeping things simple, actually, I'm sorry, let's actually do something a little bit different. I'm actually going to head to the structural tab first, and I'm going to grab this right here, which is the TR-18A stack decoupler. Now, and I'm going to stick that right on the bottom of our rocket. Now, what that does is it allows us to separate the command pod from whatever's underneath it. Because obviously you're not going to want to land with a big hulking empty fuel tank and a rocket underneath you. You want to get rid of that so that just the command pod lands. So that's what the stack decoupler allows us to do. It basically separates the pod from everything else. So now that we have that, I'm going to go back to our propulsion tab, and I'm going to grab one of the smaller, the medium-sized narrow body fuel tank. This is the FLT400 fuel tank. Contains a moderate amount of fuel for this rocket size. So we have our fuel tank. Now, what good is a fuel tank without a rocket? So we're going to grab, we're going to grab this rocket right here. This is the LV909 liquid fuel engine. So we're going to stick that right on the bottom. All right. And we basically have a rocket here. You know, you have your command pod with your astronaut. You have a tank of fuel. And you have a rocket engine attached to it. This will fly. I'm just going to add one or two little bells and whistles just to make it look cool. Some things that people like to do, they like to add... Oh, that's no good. This one? That's way too big. No, we'll do this. All right. All right, we'll give this some wings. So that's a nice little rocket, huh? Seems pretty good. In fact, let me lower these just a little bit. There we go. All right. So there we go. We have ourselves a rocket. And I can go ahead and launch this, clicking the green button up in the corner. So we're waiting for this to load in. There we go. There we are. So here we are. We're sitting on the launch pad with our little rocket. This is the main pilot view. We see our rocket here. Our staging view is over here. I'll explain that more in detail in just a little bit. But for right now, we want to get this thing off the ground and see what it does. And hopefully I'll be able to keep this bad boy under control. One of the things I can do to actually do that easily is by, before launching, hitting the T key. The T key on my keyboard turns on a system called SAS, or Stability Control System. And that's basically just going to keep my rocket pointed roughly where I want it to be. And in this case, I want the rocket to be pointed straight up. Down in the corner here, we can see our little Kerbal, Mr. Jebediah Kerbal. This guy is famous as being completely fearless in all situations. But yeah, let's get this guy off the ground. So flying these rockets is actually fairly simple. A couple of things we need to keep in mind before we launch. We see down here we have this big blue looking thing. This is our nav ball. It's essentially an attitude indicator, or as old-time pilots would say, an artificial horizon of sorts. However, since we're dealing with space flight and going around entire planetary bodies such as the planets and the moons and things like that, it's not necessarily just represented by a single horizontal line going across, rather than basically an 8-ball of sorts that will spin around in that little indicator. And we see this little V-shaped indicator is where our nose is currently pointing. What we don't see on here yet is a small little yellow symbol that indicates our prograde velocity vector, or just prograde for short. What that indicates is our general direction of travel as we're flying. And I'm going to explain more about that later on once we build a ship that's capable of getting into orbit. But let's get this guy off the ground. First thing you're going to want to do when you're going to launch a rocket is you're going to want to throttle it up by holding the shift key. If you look down here, this is our throttle. If I hold control, you see the throttle has gone back down. But if I hold shift, it goes back up. So to throttle up, it's your shift key. And to throttle down, it is your control key. And let's say you're at full throttle and you want to kill the throttle immediately. You can just hit the X key and it will immediately zero out the throttle. So that's basically all we need to get this guy off the ground for a quick test. I'm going to throttle up. My SAS is turned on. And in order to launch, I just need to hit the space bar. So here we go. And we're off. This rocket is taking off towards the sky. Now, it's not a very powerful rocket, but it does give you an idea of how this bad boy controls. Now, we're going straight up currently. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a sort of a demonstrated gravity turn towards the ocean here. The ocean is off to the east. So we control this rocket by using the W, A, S, and D keys. I'm actually just going to throttle down just a little bit here so I don't go through all my fuel. W, A, S, and D turns the rocket. Now, those control your pitch and your yaw. Now, one thing you have to be aware of, and I'm going to demonstrate here, is when we turn this rocket, I'm going to hit the D key a little bit. So now the rocket is flying downrange somewhat. We're flying downrange. This would be essentially what our gravity turn does. And we're flying towards the ocean. Notice down here, I actually have the green prograde indicator. Again, more on that later. Oops, let me get this pointed up if I can. Come on. That's fine. We're just going to fly out that way. Notice here that I now see a little bit of the brown side. The brown side indicates the actual horizon. So the difference between the blue and the brown side, the blue is if your nose is up towards the sky. Brown is if your nose is down towards the ground somewhat. What else can we do? So we're in the air. You can see our heading in terms of the body that we're on. And that's basically it. I mean, we're flying this rocket, and this is the most basic kind of rocket that you really can imagine. An engine, a fuel tank, some control surfaces, and a command pod. Now, we're about to run out of fuel here. Let's just say we run out of fuel now. So now we're out of fuel. What do? Well, like I said before, what goes up must come down. So let's say we were at the end of a mission. We're about to re-enter the atmosphere. What we're going to do now is I'm going to hit the space bar to initiate staging, and I'm going to drop this lower portion. There we go. The command pod is now free, and our engine is going to float off over there and splash down in the ocean. Now what I want to do, we're going to orient that upwards, and I'm going to hit my space bar. And as you can see, that parachute that I talked about has come in very handy. And it's not fully deployed yet. We can look up top here. This is our altimeter. We can see our altitude now dropping down below 1,000 meters. And as soon as we hit about 500 meters, the parachute's going to fully deploy. You may have just heard the splashdown of our engine. So this guy is going to float harmlessly down and splash down in the ocean just east of the Space Center. So very easily recoverable. We are floating very slowly here, so I'm going to speed time up. And the way you do that is by hitting the period key a couple of times. As you can see, time warp times 3, time warp times 4. So we're now floating down at a nice gentle 6.1 meters per second. And we're going to splash down. Just turn time warp off right before we splash down. And there we go. We're on the ground, or I should say we're in the water. And now this ship can be recovered, and basically in that. I'm going to revert the flight back to the vehicle assembly building, and let's do something a little bit more fun. So, that was a very basic rocket. I probably could have gotten away without those wings. So I'm going to take that away. I'm going to keep this top part. I'm just going to move it up a little bit. And let's see. What do we want to do here? Let's take... Where is it? Ah, there it is. The FLT 800 fuel tank. We'll stick that under there. Do I want a second one? No, I don't think so. FLT 800 fuel tank, and then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to grab the LVT 45 liquid engine. This is a little bit bigger engine. This is going to get us up a lot quicker. I should move that up a little more. And let's see. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add some stages to this, and I'm going to explain the staging system. Alright, so we need to go to structural. We need another stack decoupler. So that's going to go under there. And once we place that underneath an engine, engine fairings or coverings appear automatically. So the engine is covered. It's not exposed. It's not just sticking out underneath that. And let's see, we want another fuel tank or so, just like that. I'm going to move this up a little more. This rocket's already getting pretty tall. Didn't need to go up that much. So we're adding 2 of the tall fuel tanks underneath this. And let's see. We'll put one of these guys underneath there. And we'll see how this rocket does. It may very well be absolutely awful, but we will see. We will see. And let's see. You know what? I'm going to do something a little bit fancy here. I'm going to go to my structures tab and I'm going to grab the, where is it? There you are. The tricoupler unit. Now what that does is it basically adapts a single column into 3 columns, as you can see. I'm going to go back to production and I'm going to grab 3 of my LVT-45 engines. So there we are. We've got 3 engines on there. And I believe this will get us into into orbit. Let's see. We might need to do a test flight and do some refining. And be forewarned, there's going to be a lot of testing, a lot of trial and error, and a lot of failure when it comes to rocket design, especially if you're going for more advanced designs. You know, you want to get bigger and bigger things into space. You need to get a little bit creative with how you set your rockets up and how you, you know, design your stages and how things all go together. So it can get pretty complex, but for now I want to keep things relatively simple. Let's go here again. We'll grab the I can't read that, AV-R8 winglet. And we'll stick this right on here. One thing I do want to point out, when you're actually putting a rocket together, let's look down here. There's 2 buttons here, one called angle snap and one called symmetry mode. Angle snap we generally always want on. When you see it in a little hexagon format, it's turned on. And if it looks like a circle, it's off. We'll generally always want that on. That way it just kind of keeps things nice and tidy on the rocket, and everything sort of, for the most part, looks relatively even. So we'll stick this guy on here. And then down here, the symmetry mode, you can see it actually gives you little triangles to indicate how many times it's going to place an object. So with just the single dot, I can only place 1 of these wings. However, if I hit my X key twice, or I click on this twice, it adds 2 more sections, so to speak. So if we look, and I'm just going to zoom in on this a little bit. If we look, we're now placing 3 wings in perfect angular symmetry with each other so that they're equidistant apart and equally spaced. So I'm just going to put that there, right about there. Sounds good. And since this rocket is a little bit bigger, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my structures tab and I'm going to find the TT-18A launch stability enhancer, which what this is going to do is basically going to act as our launch tower of sorts. So we're going to put that there. That's going to hold our rocket in place before launch. So you'll see these red things on the launch pad. They're just holding the rocket there for us. And when we launch, those will go away. And the rocket will take off. Now, before we launch this guy, I want you to take a look over here, the lower right-hand corner. This is our staging system. Now, what this is saying is from bottom to top, and again, from bottom to top is the order in which things are going to fire or activate. So we see to start, we have the first stage consisting of these launch towers basically disengaging, and our 3 main engines here all firing at once. So when I hit spacebar, everything in this bottom section is going to turn on. And it's going to turn on doing whatever it's supposed to do, be it detaching or firing an engine of some kind. The next stage up, if I do here, you see that this decoupler in the middle has been activated. Or I'm sorry, has been highlighted. And what that means is, after this stage has been fired, if I hit the spacebar again, this decoupler will then activate, and it will drop this bottom stage. And it will then move me on to hit spacebar one more time and activate the top stage. And again, one more decoupler hit, one more spacebar hit will activate this decoupler and detach our command pod. And finally, the last spacebar hit will open our parachute. So let's give this one a shot. Again, bear with me if this rocket is a miserable failure, which will happen on occasion. So it's nothing to be afraid of. This sometimes does happen. So let's launch, shall we? As you can see, loading times are a little bit long right now. Latest version of this game has a little bit of optimization to be done for sure. But here we are. Our newly built, much bigger and taller rocket is now on our launch pad. And we see that the stability enhancers, as they're called, are in place. They're holding our rocket kind of suspended above the launch pad a little bit. So yeah, let's get this guy in the air. We're going to do the same thing we did with the other rocket. However, this guy more than likely is going to take off a lot quickly. Let's try that again. A lot more quickly than our much smaller rocket did. So let's give it a shot. We're going to hit our T key again. And for in general, what you're going to want to do, since we're inside a planet's atmosphere and we want to get to outer space, the atmosphere, that is like the air and all the gases that make up the atmosphere, are going to fight against us as we're trying to take off. So we want to try to limit how much we're pushing against that, and that in turn will save us fuel. So what you're going to see happen is I'm going to, once we're in the air and we've picked up a little bit of speed and we're gaining altitude, I'm going to throttle this back a little bit to keep my speed at about, and again, the speedometer is actually down here. I'm going to keep it at about 150 meters per second as we're ascending. And then I'm going to keep my eyes up here. Once this reaches 10,000 meters or 10 kilometers, I'm going to throttle up, and then I'm actually going to make my turn towards the east, like you saw me do before. So basic rules when you want to get anything into orbit around the planet Kerbin is take off vertically. Once you reach 10,000 meters, then you're going to make what's called your gravity turn, and that's going to send you that way. And if we do everything right and our rocket works, it will get us into orbit, which is good. That's what we want to do. So let's give it a shot. I'm going to throttle up. There we go. We're at full throttle. SAS is turned on. Our Kerbal is ready. 3, 2, 1, and launch. And we're off. Gaining some good speed. I'm going to maintain full throttle for now. And I'm going to just throttle back a little bit here. There we go. See, I'm keeping the speed at around 120-ish. I don't want to go really much faster than that until we're all the way up. So again, we're just taking off vertically here. Still continuing to slow down. And one thing you'll notice is as this is happening, and this rocket might not actually make it, but we'll try again. If anything, I'll load up one of my pre-made rockets and demonstrate, because I know most of those can get into orbit. But there we go, coming up on 10,000. All right, I'm gonna start to pitch this towards the east, and I want to get about a 45-degree pitch angle, and I'm going to throttle up. Now we ran out of fuel, so there. I dropped the stage by hitting spacebar, and then I hit spacebar again to launch us on our next engine and launch us skyward. Now, our SAS is going to hold this attitude. We're kind of at a 45-degree angle. You can sort of see the 45-degree indicator. It's a little hard to see on the nav ball, but we're generally facing towards the east at about 90 degrees, so that's good. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit my M key. That's going to bring me up to my orbital map. What I want to look at now is this. This is my apoapse, or my apoapsis, and you see it's getting a lot bigger. So it's actually to a point where I want to cut my throttle. Reason for that, the apoapsis is up at about 102. It's going to kind of creep down a little bit because I'm still ascending through the atmosphere. So the atmosphere is slowing me down, but as you can see, that's going to stabilize at about 100. I'm currently on a suborbital velocity right now, or suborbital trajectory. And I'm going to basically fly up to here. It shows you the projected path. My ship is going to fly up to about here. It's going to peak at this point, and it's going to come back down. But we don't want that to happen. We actually want to get into orbit. So what we're going to do is right at this marker, the apoapsis marker, I'm going to click once, and I'm going to add a maneuver node. Now what this maneuver node is going to do is it's going to allow me to project a boost that's going to actually put me at orbital velocity. So we're just keeping that going, keeping that going. There we go. On the other side of the planet now, you can see I have a projected periapsis. And I need to do this a little bit more quickly. Let's get that up there. There we go. 99 and 104, that's good. All right. So now, while we're in this mode, what I can actually do is I can orient the ship from map mode. And if you look at the nav ball, there's now a blue marker. So we have the green marker, which is our prograde vector, and we have the blue node, which is our target vector. We want to point our ship at that. And we want to wait until we're right at about this. So we can see the burn is in T minus 30 seconds. Right here, T minus 30. And our expected burn time is about 25 seconds. So what we want to do is we want to start the burn at about half the time, at about half the T minus. So literally right now. So I'm going to burn. That way we have half the burn at T minus and half the burn at T plus. That way, because we can't change our speeds instantaneously, it allows us to, and I'm just going to throttle down because we're getting close. There we go. Not bad. Little lopsided, but not bad. All right. So guess what? I'm now in orbit. I've got barely any fuel left, but I'm in orbit at about 100 kilometers. It's fairly stable, slightly inclined, but that's okay. I'm not super worried about that. But we're in space. And that's really all it takes. You know, you just got to build a rocket with enough fuel to get you up. And so long as you know how to fly, you'll do fine. And it does take practice. Your first few rockets are going to fall over on their sides, guaranteed. You're going to take them off, they're going to fly a little bit, and they're just going to fall. So honestly, don't worry about that too much. Just, you know, give it the old college try, as they would say, and practice. And that's what it takes. It is a sandbox mode, so you do have pretty much infinite amount of tries to get this right. Redefine your rocket designs, you know, rethink how you're doing things. It does take a little bit to, you know, to get right. You're not going to get it right the first time, so hope this helps some budding young astronauts, Kerbonauts, and we'll see you again real soon for another video. I'm looking to do a few of these, a couple of advanced topics, and some advanced rocket design. So take care. Again, my name is Mike. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.